Okay, so how's everybody doing? So what I want to do here is I want to show you how I lay this rail down. It's just one of many ways. Like, I have loads of experience in the past in doing, wooden ties, plastic ties, mostly in O though. I never used to bother with HO hand laying because you don't really have to. But when you do a little spur like this, it's kind of cool. And to use these particular Central Valley, this is my first time using them, they look pretty good. And this is code 55, so I made a revision. I stayed away from code 40. The intro shows you a switcher on code 40. The problem is, though, is you're always fighting to keep everything perfect, like 100% perfect for reliability on code 40. It looks cool, and when you get it to run, it's great, but I don't want to be thinking about that all the time because, frankly, like, even on a model railroad, you have to maintain it. So I've used code 55, so I'll show you how I glue this down. And just before I do, I sort of mentioned in the text a little bit in the title cards about matte medium. I use matte medium for lots of reasons, and I get why people use Elmer's white glue. Use whatever you want, whatever's practical, whatever suits your budget. But I use it because it's a one-stop adhesive and it's flexible. And why does that matter? So there's membrane qualities between like Elmer's white glue and matte medium that are completely different. Like if you pour Elmer's white glue onto a yogurt cup, let it dry for a week, peel it off, and then snap it or hit it with a hammer and see what happens, right? It just shatters into little pieces. Do the same with matte medium, and it doesn't. It just dents or bends. You can practically roll it around your finger. Why does that matter with ballast? Well, I'll tell you why. If you're just into the look, probably won't notice, right? But if you're into sound deadening, big difference. So if you, like when you lay cork down and then track on top of cork, like if you put Elmer's glue, like you make a hard shell membrane, it actually affects the sound dramatically. It really does. If you have the time to test it, you should. I don't have the time to do a video to show that, but that's why I use matte medium, because when a boxcar, which is like a snare drum, and then the hard, Elmer's white glue creates a snare drum effect over the cork, so you defeat the whole purpose of cork when you use Elmer's white glue. Not matte medium though. Matte medium absorbs the vibration and the sound. Elmer's white glue deflects it outward, and it like you can hear the difference. Like ask anybody that's done it. But if you don't care about that, then just forget about what I said, okay? So let's dive into the rail part here, and then there are a couple other videos that I had to cut up to try to cover this area, because like there's the grain silo and then some static grass and just some other, I think there's 2 or 3 videos left that I did to sort of cover this area. Oh yeah, and the road and the graphics on the road as well, okay? Okay, how's everybody doing? So I'm going to talk to you about this code 70, in this case to 55 transition. So I was going to go 40 on this. I mean, I wasn't sure, right? But I realized that code 40, by the time you get the code 40 down, whenever you have growth like this, you're really pushing it, right? And you don't want to have a spur that just doesn't run or function as well as you'd like, because then you won't use it. And this is a main industry here on section 3 on River Road, and I don't want to run into that. Like I already know from experience, I already have a code 40 siding, over on section 2. Okay, and it works fine. I can run my 4-axle on there, but I want to run my 6-axles on here because, well, I can run 6 axles everywhere on my layout easily because I got these broad curves, right? Which was in the initial plan. Like I knew in the beginning I was going to be running 4-axle and 6-axle because SRY has 4-axle and 6-axle locomotives on their roster. And I want to be able to do that because I think it looks cool having an SD40 or 38 switching out a couple grain cars. But so if I do code 40, it looks cool when you're up close, but actually code 50 looks pretty good too when it's buried in the weeds. It's pretty small. but it's just enough just to guarantee that you're going to get good clearance of the flanges through the weedy parts, right? So that's what I'm going to do. I mean, if I really wanted to, I could put some code 40 section at the very end down by the road where you'd really see it if it matters, but I can make that decision later on because I had, like, these long 3-foot rail, like this micro engine weathered rail sections are 3 feet, I think, or 36 inches long, and it goes down a fair bit further than that. So what I did was here, as you can see, this is code 70 with the code 70 rail joiners. These are code 70 rail joiners as well, and I find that the 55 slides on, but they're loose. But what I did was is I took some longer code 70 pieces and I soldered on the code 70 connector. Like, I cut these off later. I just needed more of a leg to hold them, because what I did was is I crushed, here, let me see if I can get this unwieldy piece of rail steady here. So yeah, okay, so you see that there? You can see where basically what I did here was is I soldered this connector onto this code 70, right? And then I crushed the end of the joiner, like, you know how they have a slot in it? I just crushed them down with a pair of pliers, flat pliers, okay? And then I clamped the code 55 on top of the rail joiner. Like, I'm not sliding it in now. I've crushed it down and I filed it so that the top of the rails are perfectly level, right? And then I clamped it with just one pair of tweezers and just soldered the piece. So now I have a good code 70, because this turnout is code 70, and I just want to just slide them in. But here's the problem though, is because it's a bit fatter on the bottom, like the base of it, I can't get it to stay like level with these center valley ties. I have to hog out this area. So I'm going to show you what I'm going to do here. I'm going to hog out 2 of these tie plates. I mean, I'm just going to add ballast and stuff anyway, so you won't really see it, but this is what I have to do to get them to sit level, okay? So I just got to clean that up. Like I say, I can ditch a lot of this with weeds and some grass. That's the beauty of pinch and stab, you know, that technique that I've been showing, you know. When you get used to doing it, man, it's really so great skill to develop, because you can, like, it just expands your horizons basically when it comes to scenery. So you can just come in and stab in little tufts and things to hide stuff like this, etc., right? Okay, so now I should be able to slide, okay, see that? Now I can slide that in, right? Now I got to make sure, like, I don't want to bump in the road, so yeah, I got to take it down more, a fair bit more, this second one. Otherwise it's not going to sit flush. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'll do that first, and then we'll have another look at this. I'll show you how I'm going to fasten this down. Okay, how's everybody doing? So now I'm going to start laying this rail or gluing it down onto these Central Valley ties. This is code 55 micro engineering weathered rail. And like I said, cleaned up with a wire brush, soldered a piece of 70 to it, and then slipped it into a rail joiner to do the track transition. So a couple things. Every once in a while I like to point out a product that I like to use. Like, I think a lot of you that have been in this game a while, like, you're familiar with these guys, right? Details West. Like, I don't know what the status is. Feel free to chime in the comments below, but like, I see these around and I usually grab them. You know, like, this is a frog set. Like, this one's Switch Frog Code 70, white bronze with plastic rail bars, pewter guardrails and details. These are just beautiful. Like, they're excellent. You know, like, if you're really into the Proto 87 thing, well, I'm sure that the Proto 87 people are familiar with this, right? But I'm going to use them. I bought a few packs because I want to use them. Like, I'll show you a photo of, I'm going to use them for the right over here, but I'll show you a photo of just some discarded frogs, you know, when they change them out. Okay, so that's what I'm going to use these for, is trackside detail. Just have one sitting there with some other rails and a few ties to just make for a nice little detail. So what I've done now is I've used medium CA, and I'll explain to you why I do it this way. Now you can use spikes if you want. You can drive them into the outside of the web of the rail. You don't have to go into the tie here where you won't see them. But just for those of you that aren't aware, so this is the plywood sub base, right? This is 3/8 plywood. So this is the shelf with the frames underneath. I usually put cork. I use wood glue to glue my cork to the wood here. I don't see, like, this isn't sealed with varathane, but all this is across to the road is all varathane, and then, you know, matte medium for ballast. The roads are acrylic, you know, etc., right? So I'm working this whole area together, sort of tag teaming back and forth, because I want to get this front of the first, well, I guess it's about a foot, yeah, 10 inches or so. I want to get it all done first because it just helps to inspire. I've mentioned that before. So the reason why I mentioned this here with wood, because under this part of track is wood also, but it's balsa wood. People have also asked, you know, what size thickness balsa wood to use. You can also use 1/8 balsa wood for track bed as well. And the reason why I used balsa wood here is because it's much easier to sand than cork. You can sand cork, but balsa wood is easier to plane and sand. And basically this, like where this spur begins, is the same elevation as the main here. Same elevation, right? But it slowly, like gradually tapers down to the grain elevator, or feed mill if you want to call it that. Okay, and I was able to do that with just a little board sander and just taper it down. Actually, I didn't sand it that much. I actually glued the 1/8 down to this level because this is a bit higher up here, and I just shimmed it up to this level. So the balsa surface that I laid the track on is completely level. Like flat, I mean, as it descends a little bit down, just maybe a, oh, I don't know, 0.5% grade or something. Okay, so now I'm going to use this medium CA. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to spot glue. I'm just going to put a spot of glue on 2 tie plates right here. One there, one there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop it in. So I'm going to do this rail first, because once this rail is locked in, I'll use one of these pins to pin it down. Once that rail is locked in, then I can gauge or lay in the other one and just check it with the NMRA gauge. Now, here's the thing. What about these ties and the rail in between? Are they not secure? Well, no, they're just sitting in the tie plates. I can move it. However, I'm going to I'm going to spritz this down when it's done, and then I'm just going to use really thin diluted matte medium. Oh, sorry. A really thin diluted matte medium with an eyedropper, and just leach it in like ballast, and it'll just soak in, and it'll glue the metal rail to even the painted plastic, and there's no way it's coming off. Like, I know. Like when matte medium cures, like, I mean when it cures, like not just dry, like it dries in 2 or 3 hours, but when it cures, man, it's incredible. And it never gets brittle. So if the framing moves, if your benchwork moves, the track will move with it, and it won't crack and pop off, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go all the way down. I'll get down to this weedy part. I'll shift the camera further down so you can see, and I'll show you where I feed the track feeder wire. I'll just show you this now. This is the rail that'll go on this side. You can see where I just soldered a feeder on there, see? And then I drilled a hole, a corresponding hole to match where it's going to go. And it's between the tie, and it'll go down through, and then I'll just a little bit of ballast and scenic, some bit of grass over it to make it disappear, okay? Okay, so the rail is down, and there's just 2 droppers right here, which I'll probably just, you know, ballast in, bit of grass, paint that away. You'll never know where that's from unless you look from underneath. So what I did was, just to refresh quick, is I spot CA'd, you know, every 2 or 3 inches the rail. I was actually, as I went further down, I was able to get CA on, you know, 3 or 4, even 5 ties, and then put the rail down, you know, pin it down, right? So the rail's all in place, but there is still a little bit of movement, which I check with the NMRA gauge, right? So you want to make sure that when you put this gauge in there that you can see, well, where's the best angle here for the light for you, but you get that first little notch in there and you just check. Just make sure that, you know, there's a tiny little bit of play anyway in there, right? Just to make sure, okay, that it's engaged. And if you need to, you can, like the loose parts that weren't stayed, you can kind of move them a bit. And it is a sort of a spur, so I actually want a little bit of deviation. So now what I've done is I just pinned down areas where it wasn't CA'd, where it was a little bit loose, just to hold it down tight. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to treat this just like I would with ballast. I'm going to spritz it down. I'll just move this out of the way for now. And the reason why I'm going to spritz it down, just like I would ballast, is because it'll help draw the matte medium into the ties under the rail and help fix the rail to the ties, as I mentioned. So once you do this and the matte medium cures, it's not going anywhere. So, okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this little cup like I pointed out earlier, and let's figure what do we need about. Yeah, that should be plenty. I always end up making more than what I need, but well, we'll go with that because I don't need a whole lot. And then I'm going to take some of this matte medium and I'm just going to drop in just a little squirt like that. Not much, right? So maybe 5, or I'd say 10% matte medium, 90% water. Maybe it's, yeah, I'd say, well, 15 to 85. How's that? And I think I mentioned this before. Matte medium, like this particular matte medium, is such good quality. Like, it'll take you a while to learn to trust it. Like, I'm not kidding you. Like, this here was like 10%, 90% water. And, like, I can't believe how hard it is. So I've probably wasted more than I need. So if you learn to use this judiciously, it'll go a long ways, right? Of course, hashtag no sponsor, Liquitex. But now I'm going to take my little eyedropper here that I picked up at the local pharmacy, and I'm just going to basically drop in. And you know, the thinner it is, the better. Like, I mean, it is transparent. If you use it straight from the bottle, when you use grass, like, you never see it. And when you put it, if it's too heavy on your track, like, you might, sometimes you get a little bit of a white film, but what I do is I spritz down with pure 99% isopropyl alcohol, which usually kills it. That little, maybe, if there's a gray or white film, but you won't notice it where there's grass and ballast and rail, really. I don't anyway. So what this is going to do is, this is actually like an adhesive too, right? It's a flat, transparent, water-based adhesive that when it cures, it's incredible, and it never goes brittle, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. Go all the way down. And before I close on this, some of the disadvantage of doing hand laid like this is it takes you longer. But if you're okay with that, then that's not a disadvantage, right? The advantage is you get really nice, distinct in the weeds track, because the actual grass growing is under the rail now, because you put the rail on last, and it looks really awesome. Which is why a lot of the old masters back before Flex Track hand laid their track. Like, they understand it. And that's how they did it. And then when Flex Track came out, what happened was they just used the Flex Track for the, excuse me, my hand off camera a bit there first. They just used the Flex Track for off layout staging, etc. But there's a certain look, even though the hand laid track sometimes won't have tie plates, hand laid track really looks awesome. But this, like these Central Valley ties, like, I'll admit, this is the first time I've used these. I've hand laid loads, like miles, literally miles and miles of mostly O, wood ties and use tie plates and rail like code 100, code 83. This is the first time I've used Central Valley ties, and they're awesome. I think they're just fantastic. I'll probably be using them again on another diorama maybe, or on section 4 I probably will. Whatever that plan turns out to be, I think I might just go with the Central Valley because they do look awesome with code 55 or 70 rail and code 83. Okay, so basically you can see that that didn't take very long to do. Okay, and I'm going to let that dry and then just twist those pins out and clean the top of the rail and she's good to go. Okay.